failing's not an option, and dad is not a noun, not at all.
My message to any dad, man, first off, know that, yeah, it is a hard job, but it's the greatest job in the world. I wouldn't trade it for anything. I wouldn't change anything about it. Everything you're doing from here on out, if it didn't have purpose before, now it has purpose. It's the most important thing you'll ever do. Just be a dad.
This is my debut comic book, PSION. It's a supernatural thriller set on a college campus, and I think it might be the book for you. It follows a young detective named John, who's skeptical of recent charity that's taking place on campus. Everyone claims that they're legit, but John seems to be the only person skeptical, and for good reason. It's 48 pages of full-color Southern Gothic goodness. We have 2 covers available for issue 1, and issue 2 is currently in development, so make sure you grab your copy now so you'll be ready whenever we release.
Welcome to another episode of Dad is Not a Noun. My name is Ishmael, changing the narrative of men of color fatherhood, as well as changing the narrative on the things that I care about. And today, again, I am a huge fan of comic book creators, and I'm truly excited to have this guest on. You know, I go on these TikTok streets to find out what's going on, what's new, especially in the comic world. And I'm truly honored to have this brother on. He is the creator of PSION, and
Yes,
I'm going to let him talk about a little bit more and just talk about a little bit more of his background. Mark Bundy, thank you for coming on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. I guess I can go ahead and start. My name's Mark
Before
Bundy.
you go there,
Go ahead. Yeah.
I ask all my guests this because I'm an advocate for mental health in our community. So the question I ask all my guests before we go into the conversation: how's your heart at this moment?
I ask myself that every day, especially since even though D'Angelo didn't pass because of heart problems, but that time frame, right? I'm constantly thinking about that as an Asian Black man. I'm 30 years old now. And I'm definitely not silly enough to think that I'm somehow light-skinned enough to not have heart disease, right? So I'm working on it. I'm trying to get back in the gym right now. My training is inconsistent sometimes, but I got my push-ups at least back right. I got my upper body at least back, and I can do push-ups back to how I want to again. Hitting like a couple 100 a day. But as far as I need to get back actually doing leg workouts, I think then I'll probably feel a little bit better about my heart. But life's been a little bit easier in my heart. I will say that. So I just need to keep up with the physical, I would suppose. But no, that's a very important question.
No, definitely. I love that you brought up the health part, but also I want to talk about the mental health too.
Oh, gotcha.
If you think about it, not too long ago, we went through COVID, and just being a Black man in America is so demanding on us mentally and physically. So I love that you told me about the health part, but the mental health part of you, how's that doing?
Well, I guess that's an honest question. So I guess I'll be a little honest here. So my name's Mark. I do write comics, but I went to school to be an engineer. And when I graduated, I moved out here to Phoenix so I could work for a large bank, a national bank, right? And did good work for them for a few years. But whenever this whole AI bubble started to happen, I was one of the many people who lost their job, right? And I've been laid off now for a minute, and it has been very disheartening. Those constant no's, right? It seems like the market's just doesn't necessarily have room for us right now, quote unquote, right? That's been weighing on me heavily. I won't pretend. I've definitely been wondering, especially because I dropped out twice before I finished school because I got sick whenever I was in college. So it's very much a challenge for me to go back. And I've definitely had moments where I've wondered if going back was worth it, considering that I've had to sit, quote unquote, jobless. I do have my comic. That's what I've been filling my full time with. But as far as the work I went to school for, it has been weighing on my heart a little bit. I think that the comic has been a really big way to help me through that, and just to make sure that I know that I matter, despite the fact that I might not be getting the pat on the back or have the job I can tell people about, right? I can tell them about my comic. So it's been humbling, but also there's a quiet joy there that I think I've been trying to protect, and just trying to make sure not too much outside air or breath can kind of be around, if that makes sense.
No, definitely for you. I think the legacy of our ancestors over time, we learned how to pivot. You got your degree in biomedical engineer,
Yes, I
and
did. Yes,
you
I did.
see how the world's looking right now with AI. I could say something different. Like we're in that age where there's a possibility that we can have that AI bubble burst. The
Mhm.
reason why is like they dumping so much money in the potential, but again, we haven't seen the results of that dumping billions of dollars into the possibility. So what I love about your story is that you're willing to see, all right, you see the market right now, you see what's going on. You keep that kind of hope on the other side that you got that degree, but at the same time you're transitioning because you're like, I have a story to tell.
I do. I
So
do. I
if
agree 100%.
if this is not going to happen for me, what I went to school for, I could transition and become a storyteller. So just talk about that. When you had that moment, like you're like, all right, I get it, I get it. I think this is the situation that I'm in, so I'm gonna transition and become a storyteller.
So whenever I first started out here in Phoenix, it was a very drastic change for me because I'm from Louisiana. So I'm from the hurricane land. We call that the North Caribbean where I'm from, right? Because it's so humid. And here it's super dry, barely any rain. And there's mountains everywhere. I'm from like very flat terrain. You can probably see to Georgia from my house. So it's it was this moment where I kind of was just I was like not isolated, but I kind of was put into a new environment and like surrounded by a larger force. And like when I would look out at the mountains, I felt this very stoic energy. Like I would look out at it and it felt like it was just staring back at me. I know it sounds ridiculous, but um, I started writing about a year and a half into me working my first big job after college, and it was because I just felt super unfulfilled. I had been thinking about maybe doing a comic a long time ago. I mentioned it to a friend of mine who was a screenwriter because I knew he knew how to write a script, and I was like, I got ideas for this, and this. What do you think? And he's like, you have an idea, you should just write it. And I was like, bro, I'm studying engineering, man. I ain't got time for all this. But it just kind of slowly what if I do have time for it, right? Once I'm older, I have some money I can stack up into the bank. I can kind of, put this apart from my savings and kind of treat it as something that I'm kind of building in that similar regard. And I networked. I was a big nerd back in the day, so I already knew what artists I wanted for this project. Che and I were both part of the same esports group back in the day because I actually was an Overwatch coach. I used to coach at high level for that. So he was a part of the esports group. He used to do like comics for them, and he was like, "Man, I want to really just like sink my teeth into something." And I was like, I think I have a story because I felt like there was just this constant. When I was at Jackson State, right? Mind you, my senior year was Deion Sanders' first year as head coach.
Okay.
Yeah, so like there was a lot of new renewal type energy on campus. It felt like it felt like all the eyes were on us for a little bit. We're just small little Jackson, Mississippi. You know what I mean? It was this kind of story amongst like the moss in the bayou. It felt like there was something super magical happening behind the scenes, like nobody else really knew about. And with Jackson's like really rich civil rights history, just like all the different landmarks and stuff, I find Jackson to be a very specific looking city. Like it definitely looks like a southern capital to me. I wanted to just really put all of that into a book. I wanted to tell this story from the perspective of the transfer student because Mason in the story, he shares my likeness because I wanted to kind of showcase that perspective as well. I wanted to kind of just tell the story of like how an HBCU makes us feel safe. It gives us the cloak to be able to grow, mature, and become the adults we want to be in society, essentially the heroes that the world needs, right? But that comes at a cost. The second we leave that campus, it's no holds bar, and they know you're trying to better yourself. So like you might, if you don't know that like it's a real deal from day one, you might be a sitting duck while you're still sitting in that place of naivete. And like I was a very naive child when I went to college because I didn't start at Jackson State. I started at LSU, which is a minority serving institution. But I over the years couldn't deal with how much slanted racial turnout was happening. To put it lightly, every single house, pretty much within the white Greek pantheon on Fraternity Row at LSU, has a house. Only the alphas have a house, as far as the black frats are concerned at LSU, and they pick up their key from Res Life.
Mm.
They do not own the building. The school owns the building, and they get a key like a dorm at the start of every semester. On top of that, police call the cop. The other houses call the cops on them the second they have a party that spills even slightly onto the lawn. Um, It was a lot. It was a lot. And, I wanted to go because I explicitly was told whenever, because I got sick, had to drop out. They told me, because I was looking for special permission to take a class, right? So that way I could kind of finish everything quickly, just get out. And they denied me. They denied me. They told me, we don't think that you can handle that type of course load. And quite frankly, we think you should reconsider engineering. I got told that in writing, in an email. And this is obviously just someone's opinion, but when it's someone's opinion and they're speaking from a position of power within a college of engineering at a very large engineering school, one of the largest engineering schools in the South, that does something to you. And it makes you, once you realize that you can dust yourself off and come back and fight, you're going to do it ferociously. And that's pretty much what I wanted to do. I went to Jackson State with a plan. I made sure to execute extremely close to that, and it was no nonsense. And then pretty much right as I'm halfway through, COVID happens, right? So we all get brought inside. It becomes like okay, maybe I can catch up. The world's on pause. Maybe I can catch up. Maybe this is my moment to maybe get back in line where I was after dropping out twice and really figure it out. And I thought I had, especially since I got the big job, graduated with honors and everything with my friends, and I got to make a bunch of amazing friends at Jackson State that I still talk to today. I barely talk to anybody I knew at LSU, and talked to maybe a handful of them. I know scores of people from there. And it was definitely the home I was looking for. And that's the story I kind of wanted to tell. And it's not that it's autobiographical or anything like that, but I wanted to tell this story of rejection for what people think is the correct path for you, right? Because no one would have ever told me this would have been my path. But I definitely know now in hindsight that it was 100%. I would want it no other way, because I don't know if I graduate from LSU in 4 years, I don't think I'm writing comic books at the end of it. I think I'm just some corporate stooge looking to get paid bumps, go on vacations, spill the money out someplace else, and not really think about what I could do for the community that actually gave me that education. And I think that that's the real reason why I wanted to write PSION. I know it's probably out there, but I haven't seen it. I have not seen an HBCU, a comic book set on an HBCU campus. I personally hadn't seen it. Now I know it's probably out there. I'm never the first to do anything, but if I hadn't seen it, I wanted to make the comic book I wanted to see, because apparently that's some of the best books out there according to some people. So it was kind of trusting that guide and knowing that, the people I've met that inspired me to keep going, other people probably want to know their story too. John's a real person in my life. I know John, he's a real person. I know that he has, Representative Lewis's last name, but that was actually a joke. He would say, he was in the junior representatives. He actually got to meet Representative Lewis. And he's like, "Hi, I'm Representative John R. Lewis from Atlanta." And he's like, "No, I'm Representative John R. Lewis from Atlanta." Right. It was this fun moment where what burden do we have when we carry these names of people who walked these long marches for our success and for our safety, our ability to have this education? What type of weight would that put onto somebody, right? But also, I wanted to, hint at the idea of our Southern history. That was really big for me as a Creole man, right? Comic books sometimes get a little bit pastichely magical, especially when it comes to Southern magic, like hoodoo or voodoo, things like that. They'll use it as a blind MacGuffin, or it's it's the evil magic. You have to stay away from it. And I'm not trying to sit here and speak against the ambivalence of certain Black religious practices, but I am saying it's a person who this sits very close to my community, because I'm a devout Catholic. But it does sit close to my community as someone from Louisiana. I wanted to add a little bit of nuance to that type of story, right? And so John also represents, High John the Conqueror. He represents this idea of this recurring, renewing strength within the Black community of a leader that will rise up in crisis and put belt to ass. Excuse my French.
It's fine.
He's somebody who he makes them mad. That's how good he is at beating against all odds. And I wanted to kind of tell that story of these kids on this campus trying to become the heroes the world needs, and John kind of being the person to rally them all together.
And what I love about what you're saying about the story is how it's directly influenced by HBCU colleges, and the vibe I'm getting is you definitely got definitely influenced by a different world.
Yes.
And can you kind of talk about that aspect of how a different world played in the comic in your story, as well as I want to add another question of just your upbringing, how when you talk about the Creole story. One thing I would find interesting was I was listening to one of your interviews. Was it an interview? How you're a Power Ranger fan, and
Yeah.
he was telling your cousin like, hey, you need to watch Power Ranger. I don't know if it was your grandmother or your aunt. They saw it, they freaked out and turned the
Oh
TV
yeah.
off.
Oh yeah. They
So,
thought it was sacred geometry, pyramid
yeah,
power,
so
man. It was too much. It's
yeah,
too much.
so
It's
I
too
kind
much.
of added two questions in one. So if you want to talk about the different world, ask a question first, and then next the Power Ranger one.
All right, yeah, I think I can figure out a transition for that too. So with a different world was big for us because I would argue that like the main inspiration obviously HBCU storytelling, but also as a Creole, I was a really big fan as a kid of Yu Yu Hakusho, like the idea of like a spirit detective, a spirit world, these spirit cases. So I wanted to kind of tell that from the Creole perspective, but that can get heavy. Supernatural themes, detectives, a thriller vibe. You got to balance that with something. And a different world had some of the best slice of life antics. I feel like back in that day, and obviously the first season was rough, but once we get once we start focusing on Dwayne, things get a lot better. And I definitely modeled John after Dwayne a
Mm.
lot as well. It was a big thing for me to kind of, because like Dwayne was so his first season was kind of him being like kind of not really knowing how to like talk to girls. He's kind of being a little bit too much. But by that second season, because the schoolwork's getting harder and he has to kind of lock in, he's starting to ask different questions, and like women are starting to find him a lot more attractive because he's just being more of himself. And like I wanted to kind of like that type of man. I wanted that to be our protagonist, 100%. So if we have that type of, we got to find him a Whitley Gilbert, right? We got to find him a woman who is, not necessarily, because I didn't want to go with like the light skin, high maintenance type vibe, like that North Virginian type vibe. I wanted to go with like the kind of like Southeast Texas, like
Mm.
the Beyonce Houston
Yes.
type of like my mom had me in pageants. I know what pretty dresses look like that type of woman. And like that's what Jean is to him. Jean, like she's from Houston, her family are tailors. She wants to try and take the tailoring company and turn it into like a haute couture type thing where she's trying to like figure out how to turn like boring suits and like pantsuits into like like couture dresses and stuff.
Yeah.
And like them kind of finding like this, like he thinks that's like super cool that she has like this really like distinct family legacy that she comes from, because his mom passed away, like his grandma raised him, so like he thinks it's really cool that she has like this legacy that she can kind of take on, because to him he's doing the same thing by taking on law enforcement because his mom died in the line of duty. So I wanted to kind of have that dynamic where it's like it feels like two people really finding comfort in one another as they're trying to figure out where they want to go occupationally. And I feel like that was some of the best writing in A Different World. I loved those scenes so much. And then obviously if we're doing that, we have to add in those Sinbad type antics, right? Like the campus comedian. That's where Willie comes in. I know Willie in real life. Willie literally did what he did to me on that introduction page in the comic. He literally told that exact joke. And I told him I was going to put that in there because I wanted everyone to know what him and my like relationship has been like. We've always had this very fun dynamic where like he knows it's his job to make sure I don't get too like I don't start acting like a stick in the mud, right? And I love that aspect of him kind of being the person who he's witnessing everything, he's commenting on it, and sometimes he has a joke, but like he's a philosophy major. There's something deep beneath the water, and the joke is kind of just there to kind of build you towards his point, right? I really loved those dynamics from A Different World, and how like everyone, there was just so many different like lanes for black love to kind of like exist on. Like even Ron's trifling light skinned itself, he was so fun in those later seasons once he finally started to kind of commit to himself and figure out what he wants to be so he can have a woman long term. It was very interesting. There was just, you got to see like so much on that campus, and I really wanted to showcase that like everyone has a place on an HBCU campus. And I learned that from my mom. My mom went to Dillard. She played in the jazz band for him. She went to an all-black high school in my hometown, Peabody. Peabody's very, very famous. If you keep up with Louisiana State basketball, you know about Peabody. The band is also absolutely exceptional. I argue like they're not as good as St. Aug, but they're definitely like up there as far as like high school band being like nearly as good as like a PWI band, right?
Right.
And my grandma went to Grambling. My family is like Southern's always kind of been the boogeyman in my family. If you the Jags and the human jukebox always been the boogeyman, right? So when Mama told my mom, I'm dropping out of LSU, I'm gonna come home for a little bit, and I think I'm gonna go to an HBCU. I think I'm gonna go to Jackson State, right? She was ecstatic. She drove me to the school, made sure that we got everything taken care of. And I remember I told her I was just so nervous. I was like, Mama, these people don't care if you get an education. This is college. They just want your money. And she's like, no, baby, this is different. You're on an HBCU now. Like these folks make degreed individuals. And like that was what I needed. I needed an environment. Like when I got there and I signed up for class, like I remember my advisor looked at me, he said, man, head up, man, you at home now. Because I was just looking down the whole time. He's like, man, head up, you're at home now. And I was like, you're not getting that anywhere else. And we need to tell that story. We got to tell that story. And it's that upbringing, right? We can kind of transition to the home life, right? My mom, obviously the HBCUs were always big in my life, but my mom, she wanted me to go to LSU because where I'm from in Louisiana, networking opportunities when you go to a school that big are just humongous. Like LSU really is like Tiger Stadium and all of that. If you can get in on that type of like Louisiana Saturday night, it could if you want to stay in state, that's pretty much how you do it. Right, if you want to be a successful business person. So she was observing what other people were doing and trying to recreate that in my life. She made sure that she saved up, worked multiple jobs so I could go to a Catholic private school when I was in high school, because she really wanted me to have that education. That was back when I was silly enough to think I wanted to be a priest. But
talk about that. You wanted to be a priest? I'm intrigued. What made you want to be a priest?
I really loved the church as a kid. I really did. Like my great grandma, like she was a Southern Baptist, but then my grandma, she was a Black Creole Catholic. So like I had like this kind of, and then my dad's also Southern Baptist too. So it was this I had like this. I was raised in the church, and like I always saw, like I always wanted to like further my spiritual connection in life. And at one point in my life, I definitely thought that like the only way I could maybe go to a maximum with that was if I had just dedicated myself to the clergy, and decided to take on those holy orders and be a priest. Now, my mom, she said, no, I want grandkids. My mama was very much adamant against that. She just wanted me to get, a really good faith-based education. But she said, you know what? If you want to learn more about the faith, we'll put you in school. So that way you can go and you can get those religion classes, learn a little bit more about the theology and kind of like read the text, if you will, right? Because my mom really wanted to go to Catholic school when she was a kid. She went for a couple years, but then like it was just kind of like the economy changed during the 70s. It became harder to afford that type of thing. So it was always a dream of hers for me to get to live that life. And it was, I think that was kind of a manifestation of that. I think it was just me wanting to one, further my faith, but also I wanted to be a good boy, bro. I thought that's what my mama might want. And then when she said no, okay, all right. High school comes around. That's not even a thought on my mind.
That definitely changed the trajectory of everything. But also just talk about the, like, I know you answered the first question. The second question,
so Power Rangers,
the Power Rangers, and how that kind of.
So being raised in the church, right? I know all of my aunties, all my uncles. It's very important to know your family in my family, right? You need to be able to identify people. You see them at the function, you go and shake hands with them, things like that, right? And my family was very much takes a village, right? So when you're going to be clustered up with your other younger cousins and everything, and that's whenever that situation happened, where I was like, my cousin's like, hey, what's Power Rangers? What's this? I was like, bro, what you mean you don't know about Power Rangers? You can't be my cousin and not know about Power Rangers. So I put on Power Rangers Zeo, right? The shapes on the faces and like the fact that like you got the Black Ranger coming in talking about he's got pyramid power, and like you got the Zeo crystal. It's like this crystal they draw power from, and like they're numbered. They have a specific number. It became very like numerology, like pyramid power. My auntie was like, I don't know what this is, but I don't like it. That's pretty much. I would argue that there is this air in Louisiana, especially because of how much after Jim Crow, leading after the Civil War, how much hoodoo gets abolished as a religion. You can't even practice it in public anymore. You end up having this like descaling of Black traditional African practices in public spaces. Suddenly you see this thing that was during the satanic panic being told to you is explicitly evil. You think that maybe they decided to repackage the evil into some bright colors, put them in suits and have them go fight. And then the monsters didn't help. The fact that the monsters are all like squiggly, oogly boogly. No, not the vibe. Not the vibe. Yeah, no, my auntie was, and like my family was just, I would argue in Louisiana, sometimes folks just have a healthy amount of superstition, I would argue. And that's just kind of where she was coming from. She was of that, I don't know what this is, but I don't like it. It's making my nerves bad. Like, she's like, just turn the TV off. Go watch Barney.
No, I feel you on that. I think that's it goes back to one of my previous guests when you talk about that ancestral blood memory. Like we see in the movies, like when Black people hear something, we're not gonna investigate. We're just gonna go. When you feel like that in your soul, like this ain't right. You know what I'm saying? So that's just that connection we have all connected with us. And that's the one thing that white people will never understand is that when that arrives, it could be a little minute sound. We're not going to try to investigate it. We're going. When we see that first Black person running somewhere,
yeah, that's literally what I was about to say. Like if I see someone running in public,
we're not going to answer questions like what's going on. We're just following that person.
Oh yeah, because I just need to make sure I'm safe. And like clearly they have more information than me. Maybe they can lead me to safety. Like maybe. Like I'm not trained for this. I'm not trained.
No, not at all. But also just talk about the title. Where did you get the title from?
Okay, so the title was it took a little while for us to get there, but at first we wanted to name the book The Few. It felt like it was mysterious. That's already a comic book. Any good name that's like that you can spell easily probably already been copyrighted. So I got a little bit more curious with how I could kind of figure out how to give it the sound of what something would be like, something that'd be easy to remember. That's related to comic books, but also probably hasn't been copyrighted. And that's when I kind of came on with PSION. So John's got the spiritual type connection going on. He is a person who he's now has access to kind of be able to see not only like the physical, like not like the physical stimuli happening in like the real world, like light, sound, things like that. He can also now see like things happening like spiritually, right? Because there's like this spiritual overlay happening on top of our own world in PSION. And I wanted to kind of pay tribute to like the psionic like characters within comics already, like people like Jean Grey, Charles Xavier, all these people who have like psionic abilities. I wanted to kind of like hint at the fact that he's kind of what I'm considering my version of like a psychic to be. Right. So like he's got this psionic ability, because psionic abilities I would consider that was just like a rebrand of psychic for comic books. It's psionic abilities. He's not a psychic. He's psionic. You know what I mean? So and like even people like Sue Storm and stuff exhibit these types of psionic abilities, right? Whenever it's kind of like we don't know where to put it, but we know it does something in this realm. It kind of has been like a catch-all. So I wanted to take that and then give it like a double entendre. I wanted to think about like what does Scion, like SCION, mean as well in this story. And like we're following folks at an HBCU, with the exception of probably Danita. Nobody here is like exceptionally wealthy, right? I would argue no one here is like a scion of a great house that you might see in something like Batman, right? Where he is a great Wayne, right? I would argue that we are building on these campuses the scions of future great houses, and that we in and of ourselves on these campuses make a house, and that there are people who will build themselves up into these communal spaces that will be these great leaders, these great figures of our generation. So it's kind of me trying to stir forth this idea that these folks are people who are going to be great leaders of not only just the people around them, but of their generation, and like be like the heroes that like the world's going to remember going on down the road.
And what I love is like the cover. It kind of feels like the Beatles album cover.
Yeah, Abbey Road.
Yeah. Was that influence for the cover, or it was just something that got?
Oh no, sorry, not sorry to cut you off. No, I think I had to ask Che, because personally with this cover, I told him just go wild. I was like, I know you know this story. You've drawn so many pages of it at this point. You become invested in John. What do you think would be like hard pretty much, right? And like he gave me at first, it was just the faces of this, right? It was just faces at first. But so I think you might be right. I feel like Abbey Road might have been kind of where this kind of went, because like why just show like full body, like show off
Right,
like the x-ray on like the
right.
ribs and everything, right? So I think, yeah, probably you'd have to ask Che. I can't speak for him, but this cover, like anytime he turns in pages, I'm absolutely blown away. And if I ever do give him anything, like as far as like a model or like what I would like, he always blows it out the water. Like he's exceptional.
No, definitely. I think the artwork is phenomenal. It kind of has that also that vibe of like Dragon Ball Z. You see the different transformations of Goku,
Yeah,
and then at the in the front you see his normal form, but it's like the layers of his different formations,
mhm.
which is pretty dope. But just talk about like the art concept of like the artist, because I love it. Because like we were talking about before we came on air, how when artists create black characters, it's really lazy. And
It
just
can
talk
be, yeah.
about the importance of the level of detail when it comes to um, the art of black people in the artistry of black people, I imagery in comic books.
Oh, I got you. So we were speaking earlier about the legacy of black artwork, right? And how we grew up with such great legends who have now passed, right? Um, and you know, even for the folks who are still here, even for the movements like Milestone in the '90s and whatnot, when they were coming outside, they were coming outside with like an unyielding energy to tell these black stories. They weren't worried about if they were going to sell; they were just trying to get them to people. And like this not needing a four quadrant appeal, right? That was very important for them to be able to get the actual story out. And I think that over time, we have become slowly more focused on making sure that black stories stay in the stack, like stay in the zeitgeist. They still are there for us to be able to consume. They're still being made, but we've not necessarily continued this notion of it being all star work, right? I mentioned earlier Eddie Huang, right? Fresh off the boat creator, ends up leaving the show for the novel that he wrote because of the fact that he felt it became very pastichely Asian. It was just supposed to represent the Asian American story in facsimile, and he didn't want that to happen to what his life story was. He thought that there was something more there. And specifically, he was quoted to say, representation is just not enough. And that was something that I really sat with me when I decided to write Scion. Because it's my first book, it's going to be your first work. It can't be perfect, but you can be as perfect as you think you can be right now. And that was really important to me. If I'm coming outside and I'm calling myself a black comic book writer, I have to write these books damn good. They have to be they have to be up there. They have to be worth me saying that I deserve to be tabling next to these other people who've been doing this for decades. And Che and I both, we knew that that was what we wanted to do. We didn't want to do anything less than that. And we're very, very happy with what we were able to at least, put out to the public, because for where we were when we created this is definitely the best we could have done. And we definitely didn't let any mistakes we saw slip through the cracks. So I think that that's what it takes. It takes you seeing what you perceive as perfect and then letting other people say, oh, there's a simple mistake right here. There's a small embellishment right here. Things like that, small little imperfection, right? Once you think it's perfect, you get it out there and you try and make sure that people see that you are not trying to just put out a story and expect people to buy it because it's black. We want it to be, we want to one day write the next training day. We want to one day write like we want to write something that big. Sinners just came out. We're in that Southern Gothic space as well. We want to continue to pad out that genre because it's one that's close to home for us. We want to say if we're doing this at that level, that people agree that we deserve to be outside calling ourselves this. So there's a big responsibility there, because a lot of people just want to be able to write their stories. They don't want to have to worry about being put into this box or having to put on this yoke of responsibility when it comes to telling black stories. But I'm damn proud to do so. I'll put it like that.
No, definitely. And I want to lead into that question too. Is like I know we talked about it offline. That level of responsibility as a Black writer to keep the legacy of our history going, because the one thing we as a group, we don't document things. What we do is we do word of mouth,
Oral tradition type stuff.
or tradition stuff. So just talk about that importance as a Black writer of documenting things that you learn from your mom, from your grandmother, from the ancestors, that you apply into your storytelling, and how vital that is.
No, that's a great question. I would argue that I've been given such a life of love from the Black women who raised me. I hope that one day I can pour out all of the learnings, lessons, teachings, and just like comfort that they gave me onto the page. Because I know that I'm too ADHD to probably remember everything, but that's definitely a part of it. It's remembering what made me comfortable, what made me feel safe, what made me want to learn about our history, our people. Go out there and find these stories. Network with the people around me. If we don't write down something, folks won't know we were here. It's kind of like the Zora Neale Hurston thing. You have to let people, even and like in antithesis, right? Because she was saying, if you let people do evil to you, you don't say something, they'll say you liked it, right? That you enjoyed it. I would say the opposite of that is true too. You need to write about the good times. So that way they know that you had a good life. And that your life was worth living. Because I do think sometimes we can get a little bit overly pessimistic sometimes with how we represent our experience, as if there's no as if it doesn't bend towards like an ending of joy. You know what I mean? It doesn't end with like, fish fries and cookouts. You know what I mean? Like I I want to showcase that. And like that's a big part in comics. It can be kind of hard, right? These 22 page comic books are coming from the big two. You're not going to be able to put the big moments in there. Us being 48 pages, we can do that, right? We made sure to put a cameo to the entrance arc to Jackson State on one panel. We made sure to put the planetarium from downtown in Jackson on another panel, because we get the space to kind of be able to go in there and put these, these things in there that really matter. And like for issue 2, we get to do that even more. A little bit of a spoiler since people are tuning in, I can tell you here. Issue 2 is going to be, because we mentioned in the first issue, the Battle of the Bands is in issue 2. So Coastal University, which is supposed to be representative of a Southern, instead of Southern University, they're Coastal University. They're coming to play against Gibbs Green. And we're going to get to see like, drum majors, like field performances. We're going to get to see like how the fact that like nobody comes for the game, they come for the halftime show, right? All fifth quarters, things like that, right? John's going to have to kind of be traversing all of this in the background while his main story is happening. And like being able to weave in things like this, in a big 2 space, they might tell you can't put this in if you don't work it in the right ways. You know what I mean? Like, oh, is it just a nod? Is it just filigree? Is it just supposed to be this like, oh, it's like this? But like, if like the whole day has to be sort of centered around this, now suddenly you can't take this out of my piece. You know what I mean? Now I've been able to take experiences like that, like we both know, like the Black community knows how important the band is. It is,
Oh yeah, no doubt.
yeah, absolutely. Being able to have that's big. I wanted to be able to showcase, because my mom was in the band. My mom always used to make fun of me because I played football instead of being in the band. You know what I mean? She's like, "Oh, I was an athlete. I know about all of that." It's like contact. Stop. No, but I wanted to showcase that. I wanted to, because my mom played the flute in the band. I wanted to showcase that. And I wanted to showcase John. John used to be in the band. He played trumpet. I wanted to showcase that, like, he's a leader, somebody who, he can lead in the saints, if you will, with that trumpet, right? I wanted to kind of showcase that with this kind of, like you can see these things in if you kind of do that, and that's really important to me. I'm gonna be honest. I find that Black comic books need to be a little bit more than just a Black person beating up somebody. I love Spawn to death, but I would argue that the reason why we don't remember Al Simmons in the great conversations of Black comic book heroes is because of the fact that he does not do much to represent us outside of just being us. And I think that's hard. That's hard because Al's cool, man. Al did some big numbers. Al sold 1.5 million comic books. So like, as far as Black numbers are concerned in the indie space, that's big that a Black man did that. You don't hear many people talking about it though, because was it representative of us? I don't know. And especially considering the disfigurement and like the face mask and everything, I don't know. And then the fact that he was like white when they first brought him back, he had to like get his old body. It was weird, man. It was weird. I don't want to make weird comic books in that regard. I want you to know this is for black folks. Like you shouldn't have to ask. You know what I mean?
Right.
And
No,
not that
definitely.
it's not that our stuff can't be for everyone, but I am saying that like I see the faces I get whenever I set up in places. I see that like white folks look my way, they see black folks on a poster and they immediately flip their head the other way. I know what's going on. I know what my market is. And I think that it's important to write for the market that I want to sell to. So we're looking to try and do just that.
And you're doing it and keep on doing it. And I appreciate you for coming on the podcast. How can people find you and how can people buy the book?
So we are on all socials. Specifically, we're on Facebook, Threads, Instagram, and TikTok, and YouTube. All at Crimson Sleeper Studios. Crimson Sleeper Studios, like this, right here, with the clock. We have a Shopify store where you can buy our book there, but I would recommend you buy it from us in the TikTok shop just because they let us give you a bunch of really fun incentives and the shipping is usually going to be cheaper because they can charge you the exact rate for shipping. But yeah, we have all of issue 1 and extended merch like this hoodie all on the TikTok shop and on our Shopify. So yeah, you can pretty much Google us, Crimson Sleeper Studios, and most of our links will pop up on the first page. So yeah, that's us. And PSION is our book.
Definitely. Go cop the book. Go clap the merch, and I'm looking forward to what you guys got in the future.
Just to show it, I got it right here.
That's a dope ass cover. It's really dope.
Thank you so
I would just buy the book for the cover, and that's what I'm gonna do. But I'm gonna definitely read the book. Again, this has been another great conversation on the podcast. Like, subscribe, and we're out. Peace. All right, stay on for 1 second. Let me in the recording.